Liverpool are going to sign Stuttgart's Endo for £15 million, and Jurgen Klopp has finally got a solution to his defensive midfielder crisis. In this video, we'll talk about what Endo brings to Liverpool and where Liverpool will go this season. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's be completely real. Endo is a stopgap. He's 30 years old. He's not first choice, second choice, third choice, dare I say even fourth choice, with Doucouré from Crystal Palace being linked up. But you can also have that thought process and still say that he's obviously got a lot of quality, and for a lot of people, he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the Bundesliga last season. So you can have both opinions at the same time and hold them and still say this would be a massively frustrating transfer if I was Jurgen Klopp. Look, on one level, he needs that body, and we'll talk about what he'll bring to the starting 11, because Liverpool are desperately in need for defensive midfielder cover. It's almost to the point now, it's better to just bring him in versus just not having anyone. It's better to have a gamble than not having anyone, to be honest, in terms of the amount of bodies in that Liverpool squad. There just aren't enough. Let's just talk about what this deal brings. He's 30 years old, nearly got relegated with Stuttgart last season. He's 7th in Bundesliga in terms of distance covered. He wears a gum shield when he plays football. So this is a combative, aggressive guy who's actually very good on the ball. Some of his passing numbers are fantastic as well. He's even got a good long strike on him as well. So he is a good footballer. He looks like a good footballer. Liverpool need world-class players throughout the spine. And they need that investment every single summer, forever, as long as football exists. Now, obviously, you can take a summer off here and there if you sign young players. But the reality is, every big football club needs world-class additions being brought in to supplement the squad. And you do feel that last summer, Liverpool, I know they backed Jurgen Klopp with Gakpo in kind of January, but you do feel letting go of Fabinho, letting go of Henderson, fine, maybe it makes a lot of sense for the kind of moneyball approach that FSG are trying to do with Jurgen Klopp. I get that. I wouldn't begrudge either playing for going to Saudi Arabia and earning their money. But then Jurgen Klopp deserves a Caicedo. He deserves a Lavia. He deserves that kind of world-class talent. And Endo clearly will never be that because he's 30 years old. He could be good for now. He could be good next year. But I mean, look at some of these long-term contracts these players are signing. You know, Lavia's 19 years old. It's only upside. It's obviously a lot more expensive. I don't know why Liverpool couldn't go in for 70 million for Lavia. If you're going to do it, if you're going to play that kind of game, Liverpool are a massive football institution. Jurgen Klopp must be pulling his hair out. Because on one level, I'm sure he'll think, yeah, I can make Endo work. You know, he made Alisson work from Roma. He made Salah work from Roma. Mane from Southampton. These players that he's had to develop, and he's turned them into world-class players. Maybe he can do that with Endo. But for me, my gut reaction is, despite of Endo's qualities, is that it's an Arthur transfer from last season. That absolutely shocking loan move for the Juventus midfielder, who had a couple of good seasons for Barcelona, if that. And, you know, he comes in, it's a kind of stopgap, as a kind of, you know, ticking the boxes for FSG to make sure Jurgen Klopp looks happy. But he knows deep down that Arthur was a really poor investment from the club. It's a waste of time. There was no kind of long-term outlook, and it wasn't a positive transfer. And I do think Endo is not a positive transfer in the long haul of Liverpool Football Club. They needed Lavia. They needed Lavia, in my opinion. The kid's ceiling is world-class. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Caicedo, in my honest opinion. Now, Doucouré, maybe they get Doucouré as well, and this video becomes defunct, and I'm chatting gas. Fine. Because Doucouré is, 23 years old, Crystal Palace player of the season last year. He's already played in the Premier League. That's a massive factor for Endo. He's never played in the Premier League. He only joined European football, 3-4 years ago, playing a lot in the Japanese league, with all due respect, isn't there yet. So it is a big gamble in that regard. But I go back to my point about what I saw with Chelsea-Liverpool on the weekend. It was actually laughable. It was actually laughable, the options that Jurgen Klopp had at his disposal. Yes, he's probably got a lot of options, but he didn't have any defensive midfielder options. How has he got there where the composition of the Liverpool squad is so weak in that area? In an area that you could argue, everyone's got their opinions on strikers, centre-backs, goalkeepers, who's got the most important, tough role. There's a world for me where the defensive midfielder role is maybe the most important by 5% more than the next role in modern football. It sounds weird, but I look at Kante's effects at Leicester City, then go into Chelsea. I look at Rodri last season. these kind of deep line playmakers that can cover ground, hit into a challenge, perform excellent kind of cover work. Henderson was fantastic. You could argue Henderson was massive for Trent, massive for Salah. You know, got the best out of Salah when Henderson was on good form. Even go back to someone like Gareth Barry, someone I've got so much respect for. These players that are able to do the humble, due diligent work at a very, very high level without getting burnt out. And Liverpool deserved the best in that field. And you have to just sit here and say Endo isn't. Now, for £15 million, it is good business in that regard. And he has got the experience. It's not a complete gamble with him being a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. Going back to the point with Chelsea, Liverpool, I thought it was an absolute disgrace how McAllister at points was by himself. Szoboszlai cannot be doing that role. He's a luxury player with all due respect. He's a creative player. By luxury, I mean he has to be protected because he's got to be going forward and thinking about how to create goals for Liverpool. So he's got to be protected. McAllister did a sterling job. I thought he was fantastic against Chelsea by himself. Some of the positions he picked up were so smart because he could have easily got outrun in midfield. And there were points where maybe he did a little bit. But honestly, the performance from McAllister was fantastic. To do it by himself. But it's suicidal. It's suicidal to expect McAllister to do it by himself. To then look at maybe him and Lavia, him and Caicedo, fantastic. Wow. With Szoboszlai. Thiago, you can kind of pepper him in if he stays in the squad. Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, fantastic. But without that kind of star defensive midfielder, and it being Endo, his first season in the league, he's only getting older. I guess we all are. But he's only getting, you know, further into his 30s. There are some issues for me, and that I would be a little bit concerned. I would be a little bit concerned. For me, it almost like gives if Liverpool really struggle this season, I don't think they will. I don't particularly want them to do well, but these kind of transfer situations kick managers out the door. He'll be so frustrated that he's not being backed, and if there is any movement in Germany with a certain club, with the national side, Hansi Flick isn't doing so well. If there's any movement at Real Madrid with Ancelotti, etc., you know, it's going to kick this guy out the door. And once Liverpool in this FSG model without Jurgen Klopp, I think they're really struggling. I think it's almost like a bit of a Spurs effect with Pochettino, a little bit. They've got some fantastic talent at Liverpool. Key point, they don't have it in the defensive midfielder situation. If I was Jurgen Klopp, I'd be sat there thinking, really, Endo plus Caicedo, bang on. Endo plus Decore, maybe that happens. Endo plus Lavia, fantastic business. Got a bit of experience, 50 million quid. You've got rid of Henderson, brought in Endo. Then you get Lavia. But if it's just Endo by the end of the summer, mark my words, lads, it's terrible from Liverpool. I think it's really poor business. That is just the reality. You know, you're having your meal, you're having your dinner, instead of having a steak and broccoli, you're eating rich tea biscuits. That's the reality. You're not eating well. You're not dining at the top table. And I think Liverpool can do that a little bit more than FSG are willing to commit to the greatest manager in the world for a lot of people. He's not far off. That's my impassioned plea. I think Endo, good player on his day, looks solid. Looks like he's a hard-working guy. Important player from this kind of Japanese generation that are doing so well. And look at Mitoma as well. So I think it's exciting on that smaller level, but long term for Liverpool, I'd be slightly concerned. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Very keen to see what you think, and I'll see you very, very soon.